Hello gents, this is just a video to help you with your first task that we handed to you. It's the solid geometry, task 1. If you have a look at the task, you will see that they provide you with a front view of a square pyramid as well as a top view. Now what they ask of you is to do a given front view, to do a sectional top view, a sectional left view that will be on the right hand side. Why? Because it's a first angle orthographic projection, and then of course you have to do your true shape. Right, now just about the question itself, please remember that if they give you the base length in this instance, which is 50, okay, please remember that the base length is from that point to that point. Okay, because a common mistake that you guys tend to make is to measure 50 from that point to that point, which is incorrect. Okay, the base length is the base length over here. Right, the axial length is the height provided here, which is 75. Okay, and then you have a cutting line VT, which is provided. Okay, and they give you the measurements for you to be able to do this line, which I'll show you how to do it now. The measurement is 10 millimeters from there, and then of course you have to draw this line at an angle of 45 degrees. Okay, so at this stage you're supposed to already be able to do this drawing, as I already did it because it's grade 10 work. Okay, as you can see, I already constructed my front view, and I already constructed a top view. Now you will see the top view is very light. The reason for that is very simple. We still have to do a sectional top view, so there will be a part that will be visible and another part which won't be visible at this specific stage. Right, so first things first, let's start by adding the cutting plane. Okay, the cutting line over here, you will see that they provide you with a measurement of 10 millimeters to the side and then a 45 degree line. So my first step, of course, will be to measure 10 millimeters. So I'll measure 10 millimeters to the side, and then on that baseline, I'm going to draw myself a 45 degree line. And I'll name this line VT. Okay, it doesn't really matter what you name it, but in the book, in the example, it's VT. Right, now the one rule you always have to remember, the number one rule when it comes to solid geometry, is to number. Okay, on a later stage in the drawing, you will see the reason behind the numbering. So let's start off. I'll start here with number 1, number 2, 3, and number 4. Okay, remember this is a corner as well. It's the top point of your pyramid, so I'm going to name that point X. Okay, now I'm going to do the same on the front view. I'll start on the left hand side, which will be number 1. Then I'll go to the midpoint, which will be 2 and 4 at the bottom. 2 and 4, and of course X, which is at the top, and then number 3 on the right hand side. Right, now on my solid geometry, okay, my solid piece, there is 3 points where my cutting line cuts my solid. It's the first point over here. I'm going to label it A, the second point, which I'll label B, and then the last one, which I will label C. And that is the points that I'm going to make use of when I project over to my top view to get my cutting points. Okay, so now first steps first, I'm going to start off by projecting point A, which is this point here, down to my top view, projecting it downwards. Now you will notice that if I try to project B downwards, it won't have any effect, so I'm going to leave that one out for now. If I go to point C and I project it downwards, okay, now this is very important. This is why we need the numbering, because at this stage now you will see that between X and 1 there's no cutting point. Thus between X and 1 there won't be any cutting points, but between 1 and 2 and 1 and 4 there is a cutting point, which is cutting point A. So between 1 and 2, it cuts there. Between 1 and 4, it cuts there. So that's my 2 cutting points. Right. With B, as I mentioned, no effect, which we'll get to that one on a later stage. Okay, now I'm going to C between X and 3. If I project it down between X and 3, this will be my cutting point. Okay, so now I've got 3 cutting points, but I still need cutting point B. Okay, for me to be able to construct that, I have to make use of my projection lines again. So I'm going to project point B over to a line that's at a slant. In this case, I'm projecting it over to line X3. There it makes contact with line X3. I'm going to project it down 90 degrees. So I'm projecting it down to line X3 again, as it is over there. Now, my next step, parallel to this side and parallel to this side, I'm going to draw a line that makes contact with that point that I just determined. Okay. Okay, so I'm projecting this line over, and I'm also projecting this line over. Constructing 2 parallel lines. So that line is parallel to that line, and this line is parallel to this line. Okay, now there where it makes contact with X and 2, because remember B cuts on X2 and X4. So X2 cuts there, and X4 it cuts there. So now when I've determined all those points, now I'm going to connect all of them. Okay, to simplify it for yourself even more, you can do the following. Say, right, this point here is A and A. You can do it as you like. This point here is B and B. And this one here will be point C. Okay, now I'm going to connect all of these points with one another. Right, so this will then be referred to as my cutting plane. Right, now this cutting plane has to be hatched. Okay, so I'm going to hatch it. Remember, when I do my hatching, it should always be at an angle of 45 degrees. Okay, so I'll start off by getting my first reference line, which is at the angle of 45 degrees. Now, to ensure that the spaces in between my lines are equal, what I'm going to do, I'm just going to shift this so you can see these lines over here on my set square. I usually use either that lines or this line or that line, determining on the size of my plane. So now you can see, for reference sake, I'm going to use this line. So where this line that I just drew makes contact with that point there, I'm going to draw my line. Now I'm shifting it over again up to the point where it makes contact. Once again, that space. So now if I remove my set square, you will see that the spaces in between my hatching is equal. Okay, now the next part is very simple, but you have to keep track. Okay, I'm going to see my top view from there. This is my top view. Now, to be able to see this cutting plane, if I see it from the top and I want to see this cutting plane, this top part has to fall away. If this top part doesn't fall away, I won't be able to see the plane, because if I let the bottom part fall away, this plane will be at the bottom. Okay, so I won't be able to see it. Right, so this top part has to fall away, thus this part stays. Right, now How am I going to do that? I'm going to start with A. That's my first point. Right. From A to 2 and from A to 4, it's still there. So it will be a visible line. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say from A to 4, as well as A to 2, those will be visible lines. Right. From B to 2 and B to 4 will be visible lines as well. So B to 2, B to 4 will be visible as well. Okay, right, from 2 to 3 and 4 to 3 will be visible as well. So 4 to 3, 2 to 3 will be visible as well. So I'm going to draw them in. And then the last one from C to 3. So from C to 3 will be a solid line as well, a dark outside line. Right, so this is basically what my top view will look like of this sectional square pyramid if this part falls away and I see it from the top. Right, now my next step, very simple. By means of projection, I'm going to construct a left view. Thus, how will this drawing look if I see it from the left hand side? Right, so start off by doing my constructions for my projection. So I'm projecting all of these points over to my 45-degree line. Look at that one's all there. Now you can either measure the 75 or you can just do this. I'm going to project the 75 millimeters over. Then I have my height. Okay, so, and once again, by means of light construction lines, I'm going to construct my square pyramid. So this will be my left view. Now, very important, number 1 rule, numbering. Right, so this will be point number 2. This one will be 1 and 3. And this one over here will then be number 4. And the last one I need to add is point X, which will be at the top. Right, now I'm going to project over A, B, and C to my left view. Right, now you will see that if I try to project A over, it won't have any influence. I won't be able to see any lines, so I'm just going to leave that one for a while, then I'll get back to that one. So, B, I will project over, and C, I will project over. Right, now, this is the easy part, once again. Between X and 2, and between X and 4, when B cuts there. So between X and 2, I follow my point. That will be my point B. And as well, X to 4, there where it cuts, that will be my point B. Now I'm going to go over to C, between X and 3, between X and 3, cuts there. So that will be point C. Now I still need to determine point A. Right, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to follow it down from our top view. Those 2 points that I already determined, I'm going to project those 2 points over to my 45-degree line. So I'm projecting this line and that line. Right, there where it makes contact with my 45-degree line, I'm going to project it upwards to the base. Now, if you refer back to the top view, between 1 and 2, point A cuts there. So I'm going to follow it over. Between 1 and 2, it cuts there. So that will be my point, which is A. Okay. Between 1 and 4, it cuts there. So I follow it over. Between 1 and 4, it cuts there. So that will be my next point, A, because there's 2 point A's. Right. Now, once again, I'm going to connect all my points. And once again, I have my cutting plane as seen from the left hand side. Okay, next step in the cutting plane, of course, is to hatch it. So I'm going to hatch again my first reference line. Okay, and then from there on forth, to ensure that it's the same width the whole time, I'm using that length there. Okay, right, so now that's my cutting plane. Now, if I see it from the left hand side, once again, this top part has to fall away for me to be able to see the cutting plane. Right, so this part falls away, this part stays. I'm going to say from the cutting plane to the cutting point to 2 and the cutting point to 4 will be visible. So cutting point A to 2, cutting point A to 4 will be a visible line. Right, from B to 2 and B to 4, visible. Okay, 4 to 3 and 2 to 3 is at the back. So due to the fact that that line is already there, you won't be able to see it, so you don't have to draw it in. Then C to 3, still a line that has to be drawn in. But if I see it from the left hand side, it means that this line won't be visible. But remember, a line that's invisible to the eye at this specific stage, but you know is there, will be a hidden detail line. So I'm going to add a hidden detail line from C to 3. So that's my hidden detail line at the back. Right, so now we've constructed the front view, the sectional top view, the sectional left view. So the last part that we have to do is the true shape. Now, the true shape is very simple. The true shape is basically what this plane will look like if I see it 90 degrees from the top. Okay, so that's seeing it directly from the top, what this plane will look like. Now, there's two ways to do it. The one is out of the sectional cutting plane. Okay, and the other one is just if you don't have space, you can do it in any other way. I'm going to show you both the ways, and then you can use any of the two, whether you have the space or not. Okay, but for me to do this, I have to take out these two notes, so bear with me. Right, so my first step, out of point A, B and C, I have to construct 90-degree lines out of those 3 points. And then parallel to this line, I'm just going to draw myself a new reference line that I'm going to make use of, which I'm going to name X1, Y1. This is the line that we're going to make use of when we do our measurements. X1, Y1. Right, now, remember you have a vertical as well as a horizontal axle. Okay, now, when we do this next part, you have to remember that you have to make use of the axle the whole time, right? Okay, so you can't one measurement use with the one measurement use the axle, and with the next one use this one or use this one. Okay, you have to use the axle the whole time. Okay, so I'm going to start with point A. On point A, there's 2 points that I have to determine. So I'm going to start, as you can see, on the axle line. Okay, on the axle line. From the axle to point A, that distance, as you can see, that distance, I have it. Now I'm going to transfer it to x1, y1 to line A. I'm going to draw my first line. So that will be my first line. Now I'm going to go over to B, once again, from my axle line up to the next point. Okay, so on this line, I'll get my next point A. So this will be A and A once again. Okay, so these two A's are the same as these two A's over here. Okay, just quickly have to extend this line. Okay, now I'm going to go over to point B. Point B, once again, there is 2 points. Okay, once again, on my reference, on my axle. Okay, that's the line I'm going to work from. Okay, so from the axle to point B, that distance there, as you can see, that distance, I'm going to transfer it to my x1, y1 line. So that will be my first point, B. Now I'm going to go over to the next point, B, on my axle line. Make sure that it makes contact with that point. x1, y1 line, get my mark. So that's my next point, B. That's my next point, B. So I've got AA, BB. Now I just need point C. Okay, so I'm going to, once again, on the axle, make sure it makes contact with C. Put it on my x1, y1 line, get my mark, and that one will be point C. Right, when I have all 5 those points, I'm just going to connect all of them, and then I'll have my true shape. Now when I'm finished with this, there is a few people that differ. Some people say that you have to hatch the sectional view. Other people say you don't have to. But if you look at Jacques van Leeuwen's book with the exercises that is provided in the Van Leeuwen book, you will see that his true shape is hatched. So that's why I'm going to hatch mine. It's just for the sake of doing it. Okay, if you do it, then at least you know that you are safe. Okay, so now I'm finished with my true shape on this drawing. Right, now remember I referred to the fact that you won't always have sufficient space to be able to do your true shape like I just did it here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you an alternative way. The alternative way is you can either do it vertically or horizontally, doesn't really matter. I'm going to do it over here. I'm just going to draw a horizontal line. Okay, and now once again, this is why the labeling is very important. A will be A over there. Okay, so I've got A over there. Now I'm going to go over to B. So, because I want to replicate this line over here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my compass, put it on point A, make sure that it's the same distance from A to B, so that I can transfer A to B over here. So now I know that this is point B. Now I'm going to go over from A to C. Okay, so this distance from A to C, I'm going to say from A to C, so this will be point C. Now, if you really want to, you can do the following, and you can erase that extra piece of line, and that's not supposed to be there. Okay, so now basically in short, what I did is I replicated this line over here. So on this line, the same as here, on that line, 90 degrees out of that line, I'm going to draw myself some lines over here. And now you will see the application between the two is the exact same. Once again, I'm going to say on point A, on my axle, my first point A, I'm going to determine the distance from axle to A. So on this line A, I'm going to get my mark. So that will be my first point A. Okay, now I'm going to get my second point A. So on my axle line to my second point A, that distance, transfer that measurement over there, and that will be my second point A. Now I'm going to go over to my 2 point B's. Once again, I'll work on my axle line. My axle line is my reference line. So my axle line to my first point B is that distance. I go to point B, my point. So that's my first point B. Now I'm going to go over to my second point B on my axle line to point B. That's the distance. I'll put it on point B again. So that will be my second point B. Now the last one will be point C. So I get the distance from my axle line to C, put it on point C, get my mark, and that will then be point C. Right. And I'll finish with that. Once again, I'm just going to connect all of them. Once again, there's my true shape. So all I have to do now is just add my hatching. So again, my reference line with the hatching. I'll make sure it makes contact there so that my hatching is the same throughout. And that is the total of my drawing. Right, let's quickly recap. For me to be able to get my front view, I need to first construct a top view. Now, I only constructed my top view with light construction lines because there's a certain part that's going to have to fall away. Right, okay, so with my light top view, I was able to construct my front view with my cutting line. Right, after that I identified my cutting points. At this stage it's A, B and C. Right, then I projected down A, B and C to my top view and I got my cutting points. Okay, but B I was only able to identify by constructing it over, projecting it over to one of my sides, bringing it over parallel to those two sides. I drew myself parallel lines and I got point B. Top view finished. Went over to my left view by means of construction and projection. So I projected it over to my left. Okay, I projected all my points over to my left and I got my left view with its cutting plane. Right, do remember about your hidden detail at the back, right? My two methods, or my two true shapes. The one is out of my cutting line. Okay, so I drew 3 lines out of A, B, and C out of my cutting line, 90 degrees. I got myself a new reference line, which I used to be able to do my true shape. Right, now I got myself a new method. Okay, if there's not sufficient space over here, okay, you'll be able to do a horizontal, a vertical, a 45 degree, doesn't really matter. Just as long as you duplicate and you replicate this ABC in accordance to ABC over here, okay, 90 degrees out of that line, and I followed the same steps that I did here, and I was able to construct my two true shapes. Right, now if there's any questions, if you need any assistance, you're welcome to phone me. It's 074 495 8009. Enjoy your day. Good luck.